Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City-based vibraphonist Dawson Jones. We had a good talk about his time here in Kansas City, being a part of the scene, gigs, COVID life, and the future. Enjoy this story.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for calling, asking about the interview.
Yeah, you bet, man. Yeah, thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get into what you're doing in Kansas City with live gigs and how interwoven you are into the Kansas City jazz scene, I'm curious, as the world kind of opens up, hopefully, how did you survive COVID as a musician? I mean, it was a rather trying time. What was that like for you to get out of it to where we're at now?
You know, when COVID hit, I was actually finishing up grad school. Well, actually not really finishing up. I was in the spring semester of my first year of grad school in March 2020 when everything shut down. I played a lot of piano in my house and not with other musicians. Basically like how I survived in terms of like how I kept myself from going crazy. So the whole last year of me being in grad school, we were shut down. Yeah, like the gigs were gone, and I had my church gig, which kept me going. That was like my one weekly thing, thankfully, that I was able to do every week in person. So that helped a lot. But, you know, I just like everyone else, I just like stayed inside, and like I just tried to focus on school and get my piece of paper out of the way. And then finally, once I graduated, things were kind of starting to open up again. So I started getting some gigs at like Majestic and playing piano there, and just like slowly and surely as the world kind of opened up, I started to get a few things. So yeah, it was kind of like a slow trickle of like gigs after I graduated, but it just took some patience, perseverance, I guess, to get back on the scene and make things happen for myself.
So what are the crowds like now? I mean, have you noticed a big difference with crowds doing live music now?
I don't know if I've noticed like a huge difference in crowds. I feel like for sure once things opened up after the big initial shutdown, I think there was this kind of different feeling of maybe people were really missing their ability to go out and hear live music. And so I think kind of initially when everything came back, there was like, it felt really good. Like crowds were super responsive. It was just very high energy. I think that's kind of, now that things have normalized a little bit, I feel like they've normalized a little bit, especially in Kansas City. I feel like it's kind of gone back to how things were, but that's just my opinion. Other musicians might feel a different way than I do. But yeah, I don't know if there's like anything crazy different about crowds on this side of the pandemic than on the other side.
So let's go back into the beginnings of your life. Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and kind of how jazz became your life.
So I was born in Bloomington, Illinois. I grew up in central Illinois in a little town called Canton, which is basically just a cornfield. My mom was the beginning of my music education. She plays piano. She's very much like a church pianist and played a bunch of, you know, hymns and contemporary Christian music. So that's kind of what like was in the house when I was growing up. I actually didn't really get exposed to jazz until I was in high school. My family moved to Warrensburg, Missouri when I was 15. That's when I joined the jazz band and started playing vibraphone. And then my senior year of high school, I played drum set too. So yeah, I was raised in Illinois and kind of just like away from jazz completely. And then once we moved, I started to like listen to the music more, got really into the music, started to maybe form kind of, I don't know if I really started to form an identity around music in high school, but like I was definitely drawn to it, and it kind of just became obvious to me in high school that music was just the way that I was going to go. It never really felt like I even questioned that. It just felt like it was what I was supposed to do.
You know, we have a definite bias around here at Neon Jazz for the vibes, and you know, there's so many great vibes players out there, and I'm curious for you and your jazz musical development and diet, who was it that really inspired you that you love listening to?
Oh, initially, that's a good question. Initially, it was Gary Burton as like the first vibraphone player that I like kind of knew about. And that happened in high school when I saw someone in the marching band hold 4 mallets at the same time, like 2 in each hand. And that was just like mind blowing to me. And they told me it was called the Burton grip. And I was like, what's that? And then they told me about Gary Burton, so I just went home and like YouTubed some stuff. And that's when I figured out that like people play vibraphone. And that's like a thing that people can do really, really well. And it was really eye-opening for me listening to Gary Burton early on. But then once, as I got older and I started listening to all these great, Milt Jackson, Lionel Hampton, Bobby Hutcherson, like all these people. And then, once I was in undergrad actually studying these people, my teacher at the time, Marty Morrison, he told me about Peter Schlam up here in Kansas City and gave me his contact info, and I hit him up for a lesson. And so that's kind of, honestly, I owe a lot to Peter, because Peter is like, I think Peter's one of the greatest vibraphonists in the history of the instrument. And he's right here in Kansas City, and he kind of paved the way for kind of like a lot of what I feel like I'm doing now. Like I had him as someone to look up to, and because he's done everything in town, and he's just such a monster musician. So I'd say that's kind of like, I feel like he is honestly like one of my favorite musicians to listen to, and it's so crazy because he's like my friend, and we live in the same city, and we play at the same venues now. So yeah, there's just like a long list of vibraphonists though that I've listened to over the years that have really made an impact on me.
Yeah, I keep hearing more and more when other musicians talk about Peter, about, not just here in Kansas City, but around the world, being one of the best. And yeah, and we've been fortunate to see him quite a bit here in town. He's been even doing piano down at the Majestic. So that was last time I saw him, was around Thanksgiving last year. So you said you learned under Marty. Talk to me a little bit about, some of the things that you learned while you were in school, and what some of your first gigs were like, and coming to Kansas City.
In school, I think like the best educational resource that I had in like, the collegiate jazz American educational system, whatever you want to call it. Honestly, it was just proximity to great musicians. And there were 3 guys down in Missouri State, which is where I went to undergrad. It was Marty Morrison, Kyle Aho, great pianist, and Randy Ham, who's the director of the program. And, Springfield, Missouri is like not known for anything jazz really, but those 3 guys had such a solid grasp on the program there, I felt, and were just really just excellent mentors. I mean, they were teachers, but these guys had like lived the life, I feel like with jazz music, it's like, you're not really just signing yourself up for a job. It's like, this is a lifestyle, not even just jazz music. I think just like kind of being a musician in general, especially like a musician in America who plays improvised music. You're signing yourself up for like kind of a specific path, and it can take you a lot of different ways. It's really like a lifestyle. And so I think with those teachers, especially with Marty, he really helped kind of like just expose me to all these different ways about thinking about music. His drumming is just so good that I think so much of what I learned from him wasn't even always just from like the words that he said. It was so much of what I learned was just from like hearing him play. That's how I feel about a lot of musicians. I feel like some of the best lessons I've ever had were just like from watching other people on their gigs. My first kind of like gigs coming out of being an undergrad, I think my first jazz gig ever was actually in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And it was just like this little thing that we did at a coffee shop. And I just remember having so much fun with it. And, I had some little gigs in Springfield, but, Kansas City is a much different animal than Springfield, Missouri. So when I got here, I took a year off in between my undergrad and my graduate studies and just waited tables and stuff. And so during that year, I just tried to make it out to as many jam sessions as possible, just catch people at their gigs. That was really good just to meet everyone and get to know the city, get to know the venues as well. But then, I didn't really dive super hard into straight gigging because then I went back into school. And once I was in school, it was kind of hard to juggle everything. So now that I've been out, it's been a lot. It's been like full time, which I'm just so grateful for. It's also been very validating coming out of like a school system where your hand is being held in a lot of ways. And then once you're on the real world, you have your own legs to stand on. and you actually like feel yourself standing on your own legs, it's really validating. So it's been really great. It's been really, really fun, really rewarding playing in the Kansas City jazz scene and playing these gigs, and I just feel myself growing every single, like week by week, and I just don't want it to stop.
What do you like the best about the Kansas City jazz scene? What's the best part of being involved with this community?
That's a good question. I think it's just it's really friendly, I think. And I've heard other people say that too. I don't know if it's just like the Midwest or if, I don't know what it is. But I know that it's always been very friendly, and I felt like there are a lot of musicians who are at the top of the scene who are just complete monsters, like who are so willing to reach down and pull people up, you know? And that's just so healthy for the music. And that's what you want in a scene, is you want people reaching down to lift people up. And I think that is for sure happening in this city. And there's just so much opportunity too. I feel like for such a small city, there's just such an awesome scene that so many musicians can make it work in the city, especially with like, you know, cost of living being much lower here compared to other cities where there is a comparable jazz scene. So there's a lot of reasons why I really love Kansas City and the scene here. But yeah, those are a couple of them. I think really just like the people are just so great. They're just so great.
So every day you wake up, you get the chance to be a professional musician, and there's a lot of things go into that. But what do you like the best about the process of being a professional musician?
I like waking up every day and having the opportunity to just like create things that I want to create, you know? In this scene, you're able to make a living playing your own music. You can write your own music in this town and like make a living performing it for people. I think about how special that is. I really love being able to say no to things. Also, that's a big thing about being a musician, is that I don't have anyone telling me what to do. Like, none of us do. We decide what we want to do as musicians. We say yes to things that we want to do, and we say no to things that we don't want to do. And there's just so much freedom in that, especially compared to, I don't know, so many other people in the country and the jobs that they have to work. I think there's just like this level of freedom that comes with being a musician that once you have it, it's like you never want it to lose it. And that's why I feel like so many musicians are like just trying not to have day jobs.
Yeah.
It's like the goal is to not have one, you know, kind of for that reason. So yeah, I think that's what I would say about that.
So if you could get into a time machine, a jazz DeLorean, and go back in time and see a jazz show in the history of jazz, where are you going? Who are you going to see?
That's like an impossible question to answer. I mean, there's just so many. Oh man, I don't even. I think like the first name that pops in my head is Miles Davis. I don't even know like which band I would want to see, but him. You know, I would love to see the Birth of the Cool album recording sessions. I think that's what I would want to see. It's not really a concert, but like being in the studio with all those guys when they're recording like Poplicity, that would be nuts. Yeah, but I mean, I could vamp on this question for
I think that's a great answer.
Hours.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite
cool.
albums. Birth of the Cool is definitely one of my favorites. So I dig it. So why do you love jazz?
Wow. I love jazz because it's music that doesn't have a predetermined destiny. Whenever the musicians are on the bandstand and we're playing tunes, we know what tune we're playing, but where the music goes and how things unfold, it's a giant question mark. And I think that's, as a musician, that's the most exciting place to be in. That's like the most exciting like position to be in, because this is like kind of like some real deep whatever, but like it's just like the music that doesn't have a predetermined destiny. All the musicians on stage get to collaborate, and they get to talk to each other, and they get to kind of go on a journey together. And none of them know where they're going to end up. And I think like my favorite musicians to play with are the musicians who are super willing and ready to just jump off the cliff with you. And neither of you know what's going to happen at the bottom, but I think there's always like a comfort that it's all going to be okay because everyone's got each other. Like we're all going to, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just like that willingness just to jump off the cliff musically and just dive straight down. Like I just love that. I love that aspect of the music. That's my favorite thing about playing jazz. But then, we could also talk about just all the history in this country with jazz, all the types of music in this country that has been influenced by jazz. I just feel like if you're a jazz musician, you're going to be able to quickly pick up on most American types of pop music, at least. There's just so many, like, good things about studying it. There's so many, like, important musical skills that you can develop by studying jazz music, just because it's so hard. It's just so technically difficult. It prepares you, and it teaches you, when you study jazz, you learn how to learn other types of music as well. I think a lot about learning about jazz is learning how to learn. And probably like music in general. I don't know about like jazz specifically, but yeah, I just feel like when you're learning this type of music, you're teaching yourself how to teach yourself so many other things too.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are, Dawson? Coming in here. I'm just a musician who's got a lot of questions about the world and wants to have a lot of experiences and wants to go to a lot of different places. I feel like when it comes to other people's perceptions of me, I don't know how important other people's perceptions of me are. I think my relationship to the music is what drives me more than any of that. I think musically what I strive to be is kind of just like a jack of all trades in a way. Not of all trades, but my situation currently is, I went through all this schooling, studying how to play vibraphone. But, now that I'm out in the real world playing gigs, I'm playing way more piano and organ now too, right? Like, I'm playing piano at Majestic and I'm playing, this Saturday I'm playing organ at Green Lady. I didn't go to school for either of those instruments, but I like being able to put myself in different musical situations, and I love being able to play different instruments that facilitate that. Like, for example, for organ, like I love being a bass player whenever I'm playing organ. I like filling that role in the ensemble because it's completely different than playing vibes. I like being able to be in each of those roles and to like not let the ship sink, I guess is what I would say.
Cool.
I use the analogy of like landing the plane a lot of the time. It's like I like to be able to land the plane no matter like where I'm at in the ensemble. And so I think when it comes to like who I am musically, I think it's just I like to be able to do a lot of different things.
Dawson, thank you for opening up, man. Thanks for taking some time out. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for hitting me up. It was really fun.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dawson for his time, energy, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. And for anything else, go to joedomino.com, and there you can kick in via Patreon or PayPal. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.